joining us today. I'm really excited to have our final MSF cast of the year on mental health. This is a very important topic for the military community, and it's the perfect time of year to start talking about that. So my name is Mary Montoya. You usually don't see me in the front end of the camera. I'm usually on the back end. I'm the digital media and content manager for Mill Spouse Fest, and I will be moderating today. Before I get everyone into their introductions, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Dania, next slide, please. We have a Facebook group, if you didn't know. Make sure to join in, and I'll let you in. And it's a perfect place to engage and network with other military spouses who are going through the exact same things as you are. It's a great place to ask questions about anything or just have a little fun. We also have a newsletter called the MSF Connection, excuse me. It goes out every other Wednesday night, and it contains event information, relevant news headlines that we think you could read, and the Employment Corner, where we share resources on career finding or education opportunities. So make sure you go to our website, millspousefest.com, to sign up. And if you have any issues with that, please let me know. And we want to send a special thank you to our sponsors for today. We've had amazing and tremendous support throughout the year, and especially by these three that you see on the screen. So thank you, Military by Honor, thank you, Columbia Southern, and thank you, National University. And thank you, tutor.com as well. And then on top of everything else, thank you, USAA, for being a continued presenting sponsor of all of our events for the last, I don't know, almost decade, Dania, I believe. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts, and we are excited to get in today's event. Before I introduce our panelists, just a couple more things. Myself and director Dania will be in the background engaging with everyone on Whova and on Zoom, and we will be pulling questions from each of those chat windows, whichever one you prefer using. So please just make sure you get your questions in the chat. I've seen a couple come through already, so we're really excited to get those in front of our panelists. If you want to submit a question anonymously, please message me privately or Dania privately, and we can facilitate that. I know sometimes talking about mental health can be a little hard, so we want to make sure we have a safe space for everyone as we get through today. It is being recorded today, so we will upload it to YouTube when it's all said and done. So if you forget what questions were asked or what resources were mentioned, please log into our YouTube and subscribe, and you can rewatch it whenever you'd like. All right, so I'm going to go and introduce our panelists as I see them on this slide. So if you can have your cameras turned on and your mics turned on, we will start with Mark Harper. So take it away, Mark.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Harper. I'm an Air Force veteran and now the General Manager of Military Defense at Recurrent Ventures. In addition to being in the Air Force, deploying twice, we've done a lot of great production work at some of these properties at Recurrent Ventures, including a commercial that we just did for the VA for their Don't Wait, Reach Out campaign that aired during the World Series. So I'm very happy to be a part of this discussion today.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Steve, you are next. Take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Steve Weintraub. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, 32 years total, active and reserve. Thank you for having me, for allowing me to be part of this panel. Chief Strategy Officer for VetTix. If you're not familiar with the organization, I can't say enough good things about the organization, but we're coming up on distributing almost 15 million tickets since we've started, and it's just a great opportunity for military families to engage, and just really excited to be a part of this and really help out the drive to enhance the mental health among military families.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's good to have you here today. Next is Maggie Mesa. So if you want to hop on, Maggie, and give us a little information about yourself.
Yes, so I'm Maggie Mesa. I am the director of the San Diego chapter for Blue Star Families. And I'm a veteran spouse. My husband retired from the Marine Corps about 3 months before quarantine. So we've gone through some adventures through his 30-year career, and even more so after he retired. Just happy to be here and part of this panel.
Awesome, awesome. And then the next person on my slide is no stranger to MilSpouse Fest whatsoever, Judy Davis. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Judy Davis here. Like you said, I am a speaker and I'm also a mental health mentor and anxiety relief specialist. I have been helping military families deal with the emotional side of military life for years. And, you know, it comes from personal experience, right? I bring to the table a lot of experience with mental health from when my son in 2012 attempted suicide and was subsequently put in the hospital for addiction to prescription meds that we didn't know. And we have been helping families and dependents with teenagers that are in crisis learn the warning signs. It's one of the things. And then in 2019, my husband was actually in an explosive blast that took his leg above knee. He became above knee amputee, as well as PTSD and compounded TBIs from his multiple deployments and the explosion. So our family has learned to navigate the mental health space, and I'm excited to be here today to share any of my experience and the resources that have helped me, and just kind of help people understand that it's okay not to be okay.
That is very wise words, Judy. Thank you for saying that. And last but certainly not least on our panel is Tracy. So if you want to hop on and introduce yourself, please do so.
Okay. Thank you. It's nice to meet everyone, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel. So I'm from the Traumatic Brain Injury Centre of Excellence at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Centre, and I've been the Principal Scientific Director of the 15-year longitudinal caregiver and family member study since it started about 13 years ago now. And the study aims to address elements in the mandate. The primary focus is to look at the impact of traumatic brain injury and some mental health comorbidities on families, but also to look at outcome recovery in service members and veterans, and also what the long-term healthcare needs are and the availability of services. And it's part of a congressional, I think I said that, is part of a congressional mandate. And we're coming towards the end of that reporting year, since we've been doing it 13 years and it requests us to do it for 15 years. So we're getting close now. And my background is in health psychology. So I'm a psychologist by training, and I've worked in both clinical settings and research environments, but for the last 20 or so years, mostly in research environments. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Daniel, if you want to go ahead and close it. Perfect. All right, so we will go ahead and get into some nitty-gritty stuff. But before I do, I want to mention a little bit about myself, because it relates to a question that I have that we can help kind of get started. I didn't seek out any mental health or well-being help until I became a military spouse. We've only been active duty for 2.5 years now, but we were married a year or so before then. And it took me forever to figure out what I needed help for, what questions to ask. And I think it's because mostly military spouses like me are very stubborn in nature. We don't want to ask for help. We're very strong-willed and strong-minded individuals. So my question now is, what do you think are good ways to try to break that stubborn streak that we tackle every day and finally have the courage to say, I need help? Anyone can take that question. Did I stump everyone?
I'll start with that one, because I think it's something that military spouses and military service members, as well as veterans, struggle with a lot, right? They don't know that there is help out there, or we have this weird belief, and I don't know what it comes from, that we are supposed to be super strong and super resilient and be able to handle anything that comes our way. And so the best ways to break that is, one, to be on things like this and to talk to the people that are around you, whether it be the, friends, other spouses, people that are on this panel. If you reach out to them, you're going to find that as we share our stories, we all have at some point dealt with some type of mental health challenge, right? It might be anxiety, it might be stress, it might be depression, it might be something similar, more serious. But the reality is that 1 out of every 4 Americans experience mental illness at some point in their lives. And I believe that in the military community, it's even higher than that. I think that the intense stress that we face on a day-to-day basis makes it so that we all, to some degree, are impacted by this life in a way that affects our mental health and wellness. So it kind of almost goes bigger to the point of how do you define mental health, right, Mary? It's much more than just a diagnosis. It is how you interact to this life on a day-to-day basis. And if we can begin to talk about the truth behind how we're feeling, that's the first step in empowering other people to do better.
Absolutely. I think the key word in what you said is empowering. I think we have to empower not only ourselves, but others, especially as we move along in this lifestyle. We've got a couple questions in our Q&A portion on Whova, so I'm going to go through some of those, and whoever wants to tackle each one, please go ahead and do so. What is the best way to deal with holiday stress as a family, as a military family? Anybody?
I'll jump in. I don't have the answer, but I feel like Jeopardy and I got to jump in. I think that doing things together as a family, I think maybe talking as a family to come up with something that you would like to make as a tradition, something to look forward to. I think we all think of just decorating the tree, making Christmas cookies, and then the dinner, but there's so much around that can happen and make it fun for families to do.
Absolutely agree. Any other points from anybody on that one? I feel like that one has a lot of right answers to that question. I know for us, we usually just try to keep it simple and small for the holidays, whether it's putting up a tree or making a turkey or ham, or just trying to stay connected with our family, because all of our family is down south. So it's hard for us to go and visit, but we always try to stay connected as much as possible. I think that has a really big impact on how the holiday season goes.
I think this one may be a little obvious, but it's not always so easy to do, but actually take the time off so that you're there and you're present with your loved ones. I think so often work kind of creeps back in slowly, and that's just something you got to make extra concerted efforts to kind of keep out.
Really, really good point there, Mark. I know, especially for me, it's hard for me to take time off unless it's embedded in the calendar. So thank you for saying that. Sometimes you do just have to say, I need time off. I need a mental health day. I need to take this vacation just for myself or my family. So I think that's really important. So thank you for sharing that.
And
all right.
Can I just add, Mary?
Yeah.
Something? One of the things that I think this is the perfect time for this type of a webinar is because right now you can sit down with your family this week and take your calendar, because at the holidays, we always feel like we have to add more and do all the traditions and everything like that. So if you can sit down as a family and just ask the question, when you think of the holidays, what are your must-do things? And you may be surprised that your kids must do to make it feel like a good, holiday are just making cookies together or watching a movie all together, right? And if you find out the things that make everybody make their holiday season fulfilled, you may find that all the things that you thought you had to do between now and New Year's, you have to do maybe 5 of them. And so if you can cut all of the noise and all of the excess out, then you're able to actually find time to rest and relax. And like Mark just said, actually take the time off and engage with your family in a way that's really meaningful. We're so used to putting out fires and going from one traumatic thing or one drama moment to another. And if we can just take a step back, especially during the holiday season, and say, what is a priority for myself and my family? How do I want to rejuvenate to get into the new year? I think you'll have a lot less stress over the holidays, and learn to say no. It is 100% okay. Say, Judy said, say no when something doesn't fit. That is key to ending holiday stress.
Absolutely. Steve, actually want to probe you on this question a little bit because I think VetTix has a really great opportunity, especially around the holidays, just to like get out of the house and do something with your family. So do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to slide that in there. That I mean, obviously, VetTix and what our mission does, and some of the things that were already talked about, where it's unplugging, and if that's unplugging from as your military spouse during the holidays needs to just unplug, and I've been guilty of it too when I was serving, where we as the military members tend to use that time to get caught up on work, and so there's no boundaries. But what I learned was that I have to unplug, because it's going to impact my behavioral health, and that trickles down to my family. And there's amazing things while you're unplugged that you can do, especially during the holidays. And with VetTix, there's like this time of year, we've got Nutcracker performances. We're coming into college bowl season. We're going to get a lot of college bowl tickets. There's other types of family events that are going on right now. Trans-Siberian Orchestra is on tour. We have tickets for those. So when you're at these events, what are you doing? You're with your family and you're unplugging. And now that's basically our mission, and why the organization was created, for you to spend time with your family at this event for a couple hours a day, an evening or whatever, to spend that time with your family away from the distractions, the stresses of the holidays. And banging the drum, but VetTix is a great resource for that, and we see that through these testimonials we get from these events.
Awesome stuff. Maggie, I think this is also a good opportunity to maybe talk a little more about Blue Star Families and what you offer military families or military spouses. Because I know some of your perks include mental health support or just well-being, all around support. Stu, do you want to chime in on any of that or offer any other points?
Yeah, absolutely. So becoming a member of Blue Star Families is free. And with that, we have perks within. So the most awesome thing that just happened was Masterclass. We partnered with them. And so giving away 1 year free membership for that. And but we have Spirit Tunes that we've partnered with, and Headspace. And those are also free for you as you join. So, and then, for us as chapter directors, we have about 11 chapters across the nation. And what we do is, we work to get our military families out into the community so that they don't feel so isolated, that they're in just one spot and surrounded by gates. And we work to do family events. All of our events are free. We work to partner within the community and nationwide. So I think that here in San Diego, I know we're very fortunate. We can do outdoor events all year long. But I know that if you look up the chapters and there's someone close to you, I encourage you to be a part of that community. But yeah, I join today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Tracy, we had a question come through that you might be able to help us with or point us in the right direction. And I think this is a very interesting question. How do I vet a counselor to ensure I'm getting a good quality one, especially as finding it hard to even find a counselor who has availability in person or around my work schedule?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I would probably, struggle if I needed to go out and find one for myself. So I think probably where I would start would be some of the organizations that offer licensing to professionals in the area. So you've got the American Psychological Association. And I don't know for sure, but I assume they would provide a list of licensed professionals that pay their dues to the organization to maintain their licensing. And then some of the social work organizations too, and counseling psychologist organizations. I would probably also ask my GP, because the GP probably gets asked the same question a lot, and within the local area knows who's taking on new patients, but also knows who might specialize in a certain area, whether it's couples counseling, whether it's general psychology, whether it's clinical rehabilitation, health psychology, neuropsychology. We all have our expertises in certain areas, and they probably have a list who they refer to, just like they might have a list to refer you if you need to go to a gastroenterologist or a physical therapist. That would be another place to start. And Military OneSource would probably be able to put you in contact with licensed professionals in your area. I know it's probably, it's not, maybe not as comfortable as asking around if somebody has a therapist or counselor or psychologist that they see who they might recommend, like you might do for a physical therapist. That would probably be where I would start if I was seeking out a counselor myself. But it can be a difficult process, because the rapport, that intimate emotional rapport with the therapist, is part of the therapeutic process. So it might take a while to find someone who you connect with, but hopefully you can find someone soon enough. So I don't know if I answered that specifically, or if anyone has follow-up questions, but that would be where I would personally start if I had to go about seeking out a therapist.
Right. And I think you brought up a lot of excellent points in your response to that, especially with the word of mouth portion, because that's how I found my counselor, which the Army refers to as MFLAC. So I found her through word of mouth. I think, Mark, what was that for Air Force, do you think?
Oh boy, you're dating me, because when I was in the Air Force, it was still too scary to go reach out for mental health, which was a big, not to divert you from the question you asked, but was one of the fundamental things that I think stopped a bunch of us from actually reaching out way back in the day. And we took it upon ourselves to actually, in our squadron, bring in therapists to talk to families and to other members. So what that's called now, I'm not sure. I will get that answer and I will bring it back to you.
For sure. Thank you. But yeah, that's how I found my resource, and she's been super amazing. And we try to meet about once a week, but it depends on our schedule. And I think that kind of leads into another question that we had come through. What are your thoughts on virtual counseling, and would it be worth it if we have a busy schedule? Anyone can take that question.
I'm going to answer that one. I think it is brilliant. Right now, there's such a shortage and a problem with access to care across the nation. It's because of the mental health impact of the pandemic, and many therapists and psychologists are not taking TRICARE people because they are overfull with other insurance covered people. So one of the ways around that is virtual, and you can really and truly have a very similar experience and get the meds you need and everything using that way. And then you can continue to stay with that person as you move as well. If you develop a really strong relationship, that's important. So I think it's great. You can, if you can't find somebody, kind of piggybacking on your question before, you've got Give an Hour is one of the organizations that you get free sessions that you can start to use and access mental health care that way.
Yeah, awesome response to that. Thank you, Judy. Sorry, I got my names mixed up. I was reading the chat, and Julie suggested that MFLAC was is available for all branches. So you can use Military One Source to look those up, or you can reach out to your spouse who is serving or someone else who is serving that can help you connect with somebody. And that kind of relates to Dania's response in the chat. It always takes 3 to find the right therapist. So that is also very important. All right. So I'm going to look through my questions here. This one is probably a little loaded, but we will do our best. What is the best way to reconnect after a deployment or extended TDY? I have personally not been through this yet, but if anyone wants to tackle that question, feel free.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. And because with social media, if it's Facebook or some of the other platforms, I still keep in contact with guys that I went through recruit training with. Okay, I'm going to age myself here, but over 35 years ago, we're still connected. And but I'm also connected on social media with other units and Marines that I've deployed with in other units. But sometimes it takes the effort, and it's not only for the service member, but it's for the spouses too. And the spouses have a much tighter social network than the military members in many cases. And again, sometimes it's just reaching out to somebody that you served with, or a spouse that you were in the same command, and getting the ball rolling with that. And you would really be surprised once you get that ball rolling and you start that going, the excitement is for those types of reunions. And that's where, on the Marine world, every commandant of the Marine Corps likes to have their legacy, and that's like the chief of staff or the Army or so on and so forth. And one of our previous commandants, General Neller, he talked about, part of his legacy was reunions, because that's good for the soul. It's good for the mental health and the behavioral health. And it's not just for the service member, but it's for the families and the spouses as well. So I think, just reaching out to, and these commands, those commands don't go anywhere. The people swap in and out, but a lot of times those commands are a good central point for being able to reach out to people that have moved on from those commands.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. So I want to come in with.
Can I add on to that, Mary?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I have an add-on too.
Just feel like
go for it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a question, but we can continue this stream for as long as we need to. So go ahead.
I just think it's really important, because reconnecting after our spouse is gone can be really, really difficult. And part of that is because as spouses, we develop routines, right? We develop things that help us cope and get through parenting by ourselves or being lonely or things like that. Just like our service member creates their own coping strategies to deal with what they're experiencing. And so both of you are experiencing 2 completely different things. And then you develop those coping strategies as you go through that. And then when you come together, there's a disconnect, because you are literally going to have to relearn each other's patterns and ways of life. And that can be difficult. So the most important thing is communication. And if you find that you are not communicating together, that is a perfect time to tap into those MFLAC counseling sessions. They have marriage counseling. We did it right when my husband got back from his first deployment, because he was gone for 14 months. And I, being the independent person that I am, created a life for me and the kids, and letting him back in was not easy, right? So we needed just a little help. We went for 3 or 4 sessions, and they graduated us and said, you guys are good. But just coming together at that place gave us the ability to see, okay, he's had different experiences. My way isn't the only way. And we are in this as a partnership. So if you find yourself being unable to communicate, reach out to get some extra professional help with that. It doesn't have to be a long-term drawn out thing. It can just be really quickly. And acknowledging that you both have been through things separately and trying to understand how that is. You know, as spouses, I see it happen all the time. They've been taking care of the kids, and their service member comes home and they are like, I need a break from the kids, and they hand them babies after they've been in combat for months, right? And it's not a good situation at all for anyone. You've got to give each other time. You have to give your service member time to reacclimate to your life and the culture that they have been separated from for a long time. So just my 2 cents. Danielle, what were you?
Well, you sort of said what I was going to say, but I'll say it in just a little bit different. I had like 3 things. Time. Give yourself time. Don't think that, he or she's going to get home and everything's going to be great. And grace. Give yourself and your significant other grace. It's going to be hard, and that's okay. And then the other thing you said was communication. And I was going to say, so I will also, Steve, date myself, but when my husband first deployed many moons ago, there was no email. Everything was letters, which I still hold dear. But when email did start coming through on like deployment 4, it was amazing. And we talked about, how much do you want to know? And he was like, I want to know everything. Like, okay, obviously if my kid breaks his arm, I want to know that. Or if he had a bad day at school, I want to know that. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, that's a lot, And he was like, absolutely. So if I hadn't asked that question, I think I would have withheld a lot from him. But I wrote a daily email. He wrote a daily email. Even if you're absolutely exhausted and it's just, had a hell of a day, I love you, good night. That was it. So I always say that we had this incredible email communication. We were really good at it. And then he got home and I was like, I have to like sit down and talk to you. Like, it's really a lot easier just to do this. Like, so time, grace, communication, I think are like my top 3.
For sure. Tracy, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I have. We've, as part of our research study, we have looked quite a bit at relationship satisfaction, intimate partner relationship satisfaction, and also just the deployment and traumatic brain injury and mental health conditions, the association of that with outcomes in children and outcomes in family members. And one of the constant themes that we come across both when we talk to our participants in person, but also when we look at the responses in terms of numbers, which is what I do as part of research. One of the factors that come out is not having that, I call it a tool belt, or a tool belt of knowledge, but also a tool belt of skills in how to identify, recognize, and sort of understand what we term these invisible type injuries. And they're the injuries that may not necessarily land you in hospital for a significant period of time, but they also may be invisible in that you can't see obvious physical impairment, like, a broken arm or burns or a spinal cord injury. They tend to be more hidden and more ambiguous. And when they're ambiguous, it's hard to know where that's coming from. And sometimes with symptoms of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, you can get emotional withdrawal or emotional numbing, and that can sometimes be internalized by the family members as, oh, my parent doesn't love me anymore, or my intimate partner doesn't love me anymore. But really, it's about the combat exposure or combat stress that has caused those, or that sort of underlying those more ambiguous symptoms. And so it's important to understand that, to not internalize that to your own sense of self, but to understand where that is coming from. And in the early days, when I was speaking to a lot of our family members, a lot of them were saying, I wish that we had just known what to look for, or known what was going to happen when the service member returned. In particular, this was this post 9/11 period during sort of the height of the conflicts. And they weren't prepared for what PTSD was, or a traumatic brain injury, or depression. and didn't know how to look for it or how to manage it. So just having that education on what to look for, but also how do you communicate that to children so that children can understand it and not feel it's sort of this ambiguous loss, but it's related to some experiences that their parent went through. So I think they're important things to understand and to know not to internalize those to always your personal relationship with the service member or the children's relationship, and to help sort of establish those bonds within the new normal, I guess, in a way. So that's just something I wanted to add. Not always, not all deployments or time periods apart have exposure to combat, but you know, there is a high risk of that being in this sort of a job. That then, you know, there might be exposure to some intense psychological and stressful situations at some point during a deployment.
I think you brought up a few really good points. One, that mental illness and symptoms can be hidden, and it's really important to try to look for trigger words or actions that can kind of tip you off and say, hey, maybe I need to help my service member, or maybe I need to seek help in order to get help for my service member. Like, how do I help someone who has been through such a experience that I haven't been through? That's something that's really hard to address. So I definitely think looking for, you know, help in some form or fashion is super important. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more thing to add to that too is, yeah, how do you help or assist the service member? How can the children help or assist the service member without becoming burdened, you know, with taking on too many responsibilities? But there's a couple of nuances to that too, and it's just part of our human nature to want to help reduce symptoms. So maybe taking over some of those responsibilities so that the service member or veteran doesn't necessarily get distressed. But sometimes that can also undermine the therapy. And this is one of my biggest wishes, I guess, at the end of our study, is that family can be integrated and part of that therapy, so that they're not then undermining some of those therapeutic processes and, you know, causing all these reciprocal and bidirectional relationships that then might sort of undermine therapy that the service member is going through, but also within the family, that the sort of the unit is looked after. So, and that's a hard one, because I know that sometimes we're not always privy to what some of the therapies are that service member might be going through to help with PTSD or TBI or depression. But then that can also mean that you don't know what gradual exposure is and what's not gradual exposure. And if you avoid certain situations, are you then sort of contributing to more avoidance, which is a PTSD symptom? So it can get really complex, and I think that there's a lot more work that can be done to support family through that process, so that the family unit and relationships stay intact, and over time it sort of doesn't start to drain family members with extra burden, but also drain resilience to keep that kind of strength and adversity to changes within the family.
No, I think you nailed it right on the head there, for sure. The resiliency part is what's super important with families, for sure. I kind of want to go back to something that's not as heavy as that last question was. But Judy mentioned that routines are a really good coping strategy. And another coping strategy that I have learned through my experience is finding me time for yourself. So if anyone wants to tell us, what are your suggestions for finding me time in our busy schedule, please go ahead and say what your suggestions are.
Sometimes I think you have to actually like schedule that for yourself, right? To force yourself to take a break. So like, this is a good reminder right now for me to do it, but schedule a time to stop everything and go on a walk and just kind of reflect on everything that's happening and going on.
For sure.
And I think it becomes a daily practice, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. So often we think of me time as this, oh, I need an hour or 2 hours or a day. And if you can build it in, like personally, I build it in for 2 5-minute segments that you kind of go in the morning and in the evening. In the morning, I do affirmations, prayer, you know, meditation, just to focus on what it is that I want to create in my life. taking that time to either take a short little walk or something like that. And in the evenings, I call it a strategy called the last 5 minutes of your day. Throughout your day, keep track. Sometimes you have to write it down, put it in your phone or whatever, of all the things that made you happy. Because when we say we need me time, it's often because we feel depleted of all of our energy. We don't feel good. We feel like we can't take on anything else, right? So if we start to shift our focus into what is working in our life, whether it's our little one made us laugh, whether we had a great conversation with our service member, whether we accomplished a goal like folding all the laundry. I mean, it can be something super simple, but the last 5 minutes of your day, as you lay your head on your pillow, kind of do that mental checklist of all the things that went right. And what that does, our minds are like computers, and in the nighttime, they process all that you're thinking about right before you close your eyes. So if you're focusing on all the crap you didn't get done, all the stress you have, all the shoulda, woulda, couldas, or your to-do list for tomorrow, you don't allow your brain to actually reset. So that is critical when it comes to taking care of yourself. Those last 5 minutes of the day, really focus on what it is that's working. And I promise you, you will need less massive amounts of me time because you're taking care of yourself daily, as opposed to just once in a great while, you get a break. That's not what we need as military spouses. We need continuous self-care that is, that fills us up. And self-care is not selfish. I wish every single spouse could hear that. Self-care is not selfish. In fact, it is vital to you being able to be a support to your service member. We are the first line of defense when it comes to understanding if they're having mental health challenges. And if we are burnt out and totally depleted of all of who we are, and we have lost ourselves, we can't be that for our families. So
I think you said something really important there, is that self-care is not selfish. And it kind of took me the hard way to learn that, especially after going to MFLAC once a week. It's kind of, that's been my homework, is finding that self-care me time, whether it's 5 minutes to do deep breathing exercises or doing 30 minutes of drawing. That's kind of like my thing. That's just really important to eat, like even for 2 seconds, to try to find something to kind of keep your mind in check with yourself. So thank you so much for that insight. Alrighty. So we also had another question come in through the chat a few minutes ago, and I don't know if we're gonna know the answer to this, but we will try. How does one get their service member to couples therapy? And I think that's something that both parties have to be on board for. So if anyone wants to try to give their insight on couples therapy or looking help for both of you at the same time, please jump in.
Okay, I'll say that, yeah, there's no easy answer, but and on the military member side, I think sometimes they're so resistant to it, and I've seen it as a commander, because I've had the military member and the spouse in my office, because it's bubbled up to the command level, some of these challenges. And that's where, I mean, I can't, as a commander, I mean, it's hard to direct somebody until other things fall into place. But as the spouse, I think sometimes it's reasoning with that person. It's like, look, if we're in this for the long haul, we need to invest in this relationship, and this is let's try it. And like the comment in the chat previously, sometimes it takes three shots at it, and maybe not 3 sessions, but maybe a different counselor until you find the right one. And so that's where it's like, oh, well, we tried it once, it didn't work, or I didn't like this person or whatever. And again, it's like, hey, this is investment in our future and our well-being. And sometimes it's hard to rationalize or reason with your military spouse because they might be going through some other things. But when it's presented like that, it's like, hey, if you want to make this work, this is what I need. Because this is a team. It's and this is what I need. And if you love me and you want to be a part of this, then please do this for me.
No, I think that's super awesome. And I do want to add from my own experience, sometimes it takes just one person going to take care of themselves first, and then maybe extend that olive branch out to the spouse to say, hey, would you be open to going with me for a day? And it doesn't even have to be over some issue that's going on, right? It could just be for maintenance. It could just be, you want to try to reconnect with your spouse on some level, or maybe you just want to, have a safe space to have an argument. Sometimes that's all you really need. And it doesn't have to be centered around, some issue going on. Judy, I see you nodding your head. Do you have anything to hop in on this topic?
We've been married for almost 32 years. So it is something that, there is the ebbs and flow of a relationship, right? And one of the things that I find that works for Jeff and I the most is that we have to work at not needing to be right. Right? We so often believe, and every situation that happens comes through the filter of our experience. And so often when you're talking about marriage, you might be, judging the way they're acting a certain way because you're filtering it through your filter of, I would never act like that if I loved them, right? So you begin to it's almost like a wheel that starts spinning out of control going down a mountain. If you and someone has to put a stick in there to stop that wheel from spinning. We've all been there. We've been in this place that our relationship is just not working. We're not communicating, we're yelling more, we're irritated. Everything they do is making us angry, right? And someone has to be the one to step back and just stop that cycle. Because if you can even just say, I know that you're having a rough time of it, but that doesn't mean I can accept you treating me the way that you're treating me. And I need you to hear me when I say that. I'm giving you a lot of leeway because I understand what you're going through, but that doesn't make it okay for you to take it out on me. So often we take out our struggles on our spouses. And so if you want them to go to counseling with you, you need to make sure that you are a safe space for them to feel and be able to open up, because you might be surprised at what's going on in their head. We, spouses think we get what's happening in their head. And oftentimes, if you ask, back to the beginning of the thing, let's ask what it is, you might be surprised that it has nothing to do with you. What they're dealing with has to do with something that's going on with the soldier that they're leading, or with, something going on in their workspace. And they just don't have an outlet to let it kind of process. And so you become that outlet for their frustration to go away. So setting boundaries and having healthy communication strategies, and just those words of, I love you and I want this to work out, but we need to change things. That would be some verbiage that you can use to say, hey, and maybe we can't change this, just the two of us. We might need to bring someone else in to help us get to a place where we're talking again, because that's the only way you're going to come out of your military experience with someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with. We've been putting in the time in all the dealing of the stress. Now, how do we create the relationship that when the kids are gone, when the military is done, how do you create a relationship that the two of you want to be together? Because that's the goal, right? So those would be some little things to ask.
No, I think those are all really good points. Thank you, Judy. You're very smart. So, so we have another question here in the chat. Can military members use civilian mental health providers? And I think that kind of depends on TRICARE, maybe. If anybody wants to chime in.
Yeah, just from my experience, sometimes you're kind of, I'll use the word farmed out, as it were, through the VA to the public sector. And then there are a litany of nonprofits out there that kind of support this mission as well. I don't have all of them off the top of my head, and I know some are gone at this point, but they're out there. And I'm sure we can pull the group here to find a handful of them to kind of share, because sometimes it's easier to even get out help from outside, especially through nonprofit, because it stays outside the normal communications chatter.
Yeah, Mark, I'm going to piggyback on that. I think it also is location dependent. When we were in Newport, Rhode Island, there were no providers on base for counseling. And so we were just given, here's a list of civilian providers to go see. So we just saw a counselor out in town. So I think your location, I'm not sure, I'll throw this out there and see if somebody has the answer. Is it dependent on TRICARE Prime or TRICARE Select as well?
I did not see that portion. They just kind of asked, can
Well,
military
no,
members
Miriam,
use
just trying
civilian?
to answer the question.
Right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, and I'm wondering if it depends. I mean, if you're TRICARE Select, you can go see whoever you want. But if you're TRICARE Prime, which we were in Newport, but there was no one on base to be able to help us. So like Mark said, they farmed us out into the community. So I don't know if it matters if you're Select, if you can just go see whoever you want out in town.
Just like with how your regular insurance works, it will be the same for your mental health providers. The only issue is that oftentimes, depending on your location, there are not, it's that access to care piece again. There are not mental health providers, particularly ones that can prescribe meds, that take TRICARE Prime. So it's kind of a little tricky, but a workaround to that, and a bunch of my clients have done this, they'll see a provider off post who will say, these are the meds you need, and then they go back to their primary care, and that is actually who will prescribe the meds. So a lot of times you can facilitate communication between the two, especially if you're in an area that providers are not readily available. Like here in Southern Texas, there is no one taking new patients right now. It's just not there. So it's a challenge.
Right, for sure. And I think there's one thing that keeps coming up in the chat. It's a good theme, is Cohen's Veterans Network is a good option to look into for sure. And I'm sure there's plenty of others out there that we will definitely do our best to share links to in Whova and through some messaging. So you're not alone. There's going to be options out there for you. I think it also depends on what Judy said, that and Dania, if you're on TRICARE Prime or Select, and I think that has a big role in it for sure. And that also kind of opens the window for virtual care as well as an option, because there's several apps out there now that can help you for sure, like just chatting with someone on video or through the app chat window itself. So I think that's really good. And thank you, Judy, for also suggesting Give an Hour, because it doesn't need any insurance. All right. So this was a question I've been holding on to for a little bit, but I'd like to go to each of you to ask this question. What's one resource outside your organization that you have relied on or would suggest to anyone? And Steve, you want to give us a go first?
Great, make me the sacrificial lamb.
You're first on my screen, so you're
no. So the question was what resource that we would go to. What was the rest of that?
If you're not in Vetix, what resource would you use for mental health or well-being help?
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, and it was brought up like CVN, Cohen Veterans Network is a great organization. And, you know, we've done things with CVN, and the cool thing about them is that they're nationwide and you can be virtual, and you know, you don't need to be affiliated, from what I understand, with any, you know, if it's TRICARE or you know, those types of things. So it really, I mean, that's one resource organization. And I mean, you know, even if you're serving, even if you're an active duty family, check out the VA, because the VA has tremendous resources that are not just for, you know, the families of veterans. It's a hybrid. So look at the VA's resources and their referrals, because you would really be surprised with what you're able to find through them as well.
Maggie, would you like to go next?
Sure. Military OneSource. I use them tremendously throughout my time as a military spouse. And it wasn't just for the counseling, but they have a lot of activities that you can do as families. So like in a month of the military child, they'll have free kits you can order and do together with your kids. So I think that they are a wealth of knowledge, and everyone should, and it's free. So.
Awesome. Judy, I know you've mentioned several, but is there another one that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I really think the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, has some great resources available. They're incredible. And just if someone's in crisis, I am a firm believer of the text line 741-741. And you can just send a text SIS and to that number, and you will be connected to an accredited counselor immediately. So if you have suicide ideation in crisis, either you, your service member, or one of your dependents, that is a great crisis resource. And there's some other national resources that are really good as well.
Absolutely. Mark, would you like to share one?
Gonna have to go with Vetix as number one. Number two would be Endeavors. So endeavors.org, they're part of the Cohen Network as well. They've got a lot of brick and mortar installations popping up across like the lower part of the US, and soon spreading across the West Coast. But they're really a terrific organization that we'd love to do some more work with in the future.
Absolutely. Tracy, do you have any resources you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I found the VA Caregiver Support website, and although it is VA and it does say caregiver, they have a resource list for what they call their caregiver resource list. They used to update it every year. To be honest, I haven't been on and looked at that resource list in a while, but they used to provide an updated one every year, and I found that to be really good. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to identify as a caregiver or be a caregiver, but they have broader organizations that they can recommend to, and a lot of them are non-for-profit and in the community and have different groups set up within your local state. The other one that I used to go to a lot back when President Obama was in, him and his wife and Dr. Biden started up a group called Joining Forces. And then now with Dr. Biden back in, I found that that's really taken off. For a period there, I didn't go and look at sort of what they were doing, but they started with the Hidden Heroes, which is that sort of Elizabeth Dole Foundation. And I went on recently and found they've really started focusing on children now, that they call the Hidden Helpers. But they've got a resource list within there, and there might be some opportunities in there. And it's not just veterans and caregiving they focus on. They've got some I'm just looking on here now, which is why my head's turned, that I can see a military child care free assistant programs. They have a spouse employment partnerships and tools, and they have Military One Source on there, caregiver support, and crisis information. So that could be a good place to start with, I think. But also just the healthcare clinics at the local military base you're at. Most of them nowadays have behavioral health. And that could be a good avenue too, because they might have connections within the local community, or just on base on which to offer referrals, but also to maybe connect you with somebody who works in that area and they've had success at understanding military specific issues.
Thank you so much. Dania, thank you for sharing all of those links in the chat. I know that was really fast. Did you want to share a resource since I see you on the screen?
You stinker. So I have a bit of a fondness for the Headstrong project, which is this last one that I just put in here. We haven't brought that one up, but my dear friend Katie Dexter works for the Headstrong project, and they're doing amazing work for mental health. So that's fine.
Awesome. And I want to share something really quick that my counselor has shared with me, and I think it's starting to become a very popular thing, at least in the Army sector. It's an app called NeuroFlow, and it's run through the MFLAC offices that we are affiliated with. It's a free app, and you can go through different journeys on journaling and learning about deep breathing exercises, and watching really helpful videos from really credible sources on why we have anxiety. Why do we feel this way when we have PTSD? Or why do we rely on alcohol as a coping mechanism? There's like a bunch of different resources in there. I would definitely look around and see if you can find that app somewhere, and you can use it for free if you're using MFLAC, or you can get a referral from MFLAC to use it for free. And as a bonus for that app, they have a point system that you can use points to cash in on gift cards, especially Starbucks. That's the one I prefer. And they have gift cards with different other organizations too. So it incentivizes the process, but I wouldn't rely on the incentivization as a way to help myself get better.
Mary, what was it called again?
NeuroFlow. NEURO flow. And I know that they were doing stuff with the Army. I'm not sure about other branches for sure. I think it's kind of been a pilot program for a couple weeks. So I think it's starting to just become widespread for sure. But thank you for sharing that link, Mark. Alrighty, so we are gonna start wrapping up in a little bit. So if you have any last minute questions, make sure you get those in the chat so that we can get them answered. Let me look and see. I think there was a couple more that we can try to address. And I think this might be a good one to try to like wrap up on for sure. And I know we've kind of talked about it before, but I think it's a good note to end on. What are things we can do as spouses to support each other's mental health when working through the military life? And I know we've kind of talked a little bit about this before, like when we got started, but I wanted to see after we've had some discussion here today, if there were any other parting thoughts on that question. Whoever wants to go first.
Stop being mean on social media. Not to just, we are our own biggest, we make it so much worse. When someone reaches out for help, we are the first people, or they say, I'm having trouble balancing life with the kids when my spouse is deployed. We immediately, as a community, I'm not saying everyone, okay, put that disclaimer. As a community, we try and say, well, my life was worse, right? There's this thing of everyone has had it worse, right? Let's stop doing that. Let's just realize that people do the best they can where they're at in the moment. And they may be the strongest person when it comes to PCSing in the last minute, but they need support doing something that's super easy for you. We all have different skill sets. We all have different strengths, and we all have different weaknesses and triggers, right? if we as a community can be more supportive and accepting that there is no right or wrong way to live this lifestyle, and sometimes you're going to rock it, and sometimes you just need someone to carry it for you, right? We can be that for each other. So that would be my thing of just stop being mean on social media.
Thank you for addressing that for sure, because I definitely see it in all the spouse groups that I'm in. There's some level of my horse is bigger than your horse, or we've had it worse, or why are you asking that question? These should be open forums to ask whatever you need help with, for sure. And with us PCSing really soon, I've been going to different Facebook pages that we're going to go to, and there's just a lot of pettiness, really. And I think that's really important that we need to support each other. Maggie, do you have anything to add to how we can support each other?
Yeah, so it's funny because our spouses go into the military, they get a check-in sheet, they leave the military, they get a check-out sheet, and we don't get that, right, as spouses, and we have to find our own groups. And I used to think the dreaded words were family day, the mandatory family days, right? And I would kick and scream and say, all right, we're going to suck it up. We're just going to go for 5 minutes. And then I come home and I'm like, that was the best time I ever had. I made so many friends. And so you've got to find your group first. And then when you find where you fit with that group, you take that, you're going to support each other, but then the idea is to kind of network that out, right? Now you're bringing everybody in and being kind and just understanding that the military is its own small group within society. And so because everything is kind of the same, we tend to judge each other over that. But when we're out into the civilian community, it's all the same struggles, right? We're all just trying to get through the day. We're all just trying to get through life, and we just have to support each other. So find your group, support, but then also, be a part of those other entities to share the love, right?
Absolutely. Anybody else want to chime in? No? I'll give a piece of advice, and it kind of falls on what Maggie said about finding your tribe. That's really important. So when we first got to Fort Drum, didn't really know anybody, but I met people through co-workers of my spouse, and that's kind of how I kind of built up a tribe. And then when I needed a babysitter, I met a wonderful woman who was willing to also be a friend or just a shoulder to lean on. And she and I have really made a huge connection just over being a boy mom and working through this military life. So that's something that I really want to harp to people is, even though you may be introverted on some level like me, you still need to try to make connections with people in this military life, because that's just how you're going to get through the day. Even if you need to vent to someone over text, like, oh my God, this PCS has been rough. And then just saying, I'm here for you. I'll listen. Even if I don't have anything to say, I'll listen. Because sometimes that's all we really need. All right. I'm not really seeing a whole lot more questions come through, so I think we're at a good point. But if there's any final parting words before we go, please share them now. Nothing at all?
Hey, if you haven't already, sign up for VetTix, vettix.org. It's going to really enhance the quality of life of your family by attending these events. Selfish plug.
And awesome. I would just say, everybody, you are stronger than you know. Understand that you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be able to just pull your big girl panties on and roll with it all the time. It is 100% okay to need help, and reaching out and asking for it. Anybody on this panel this morning will be more than happy to point you to the resources that you may need. So reach out to us on social media. You've got all of our links. Reach out. We can help you connect with resources. We can help give you little tidbits of advice within all of our companies, within ourselves. We have tons of experience, and you don't have to do it alone. And it's okay not to have it all together, because I guarantee you, I don't either.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that something that you mentioned when we started, Judy. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to cry in the middle of the store if you have to. Whatever makes you feel better, you know, it's okay. But we're all in this together. Dania, any final words?
I just want to say thank you to all you guys for coming. This was awesome. And I know, there's a lot of videos that are off, but I have a feeling that the people behind those videos are listening and learning, and hopefully come away with a resource or just feeling better about today. So I really appreciate it. Mary, thank you for moderating today. I appreciate you. And
Thank you all
guys,
so much.
have great
Thank you.
holidays. Enjoy your time with your family and friends, and embrace all that you can.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being here. This was our last event of the year, so I'm a little sad that it's ending for the year, but I'm hoping that next year we can have so many more events for sure. But thank you all so much. And we will also compile all the links that we've shared into a Whova announcement. So make sure that you look out for that as well, so you're not having to take copious notes from today. But thank you all so much, and we will see you at the next event.